I would like to call the November 9th, 2022 City Council regular meeting to order. Would everyone please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Carey,
Present.
Chilson,
Present.
Parker,
She has an excused absence.
Hutchings,
Present.
Ruffridge,
Present.
Nelson.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the agenda and consent agenda? Mr. Carey.
That we approve the agenda and the consent agenda?
May I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Hutchings. Are there any changes to the agenda or consent agenda? Will the clerk please read the consent agenda?
Approval of minutes, October 26, 2022, council meeting minutes. New business, other, action memorandum 2022-024, request for an excused absence from the November 9, 2022 regular city council meeting, introduced by Vice Mayor Parker. Action memorandum 2022-025, approval of the 2023 city council meeting schedule, introduced by interim city clerk. Informational memorandum 2022-005, liquor licenses operating within the city of Soldotna, introduced by the interim city clerk. And that is your consent agenda.
Thank you. Are there any public comments on any of the items just read by the clerk? For those participating through Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment. App users by pressing the raise your hand button, and phone participants by dialing *9 on your telephone. Is there anyone here in the chambers wishing to speak on the any item that was on the consent agenda? Seeing none, looking at the Zoom, I see no hands raised. Are there any council objections to approving the agenda and consent agenda? Seeing none, the agenda and consent agenda are approved by unanimous consent. The next item on the agenda is presentation with prior notice, and that'll be the oath of office for swearing in new police officers, Reed Culver and Adriana A.J. Fresquez. Hopefully I got that halfway right. Okay, if they would please come forward, I will now give the new police officers the oath of office. All right, we'll do it here. All right, this police officer's oath of office, state of Alaska, city of Soldotna. Repeat after me and state your full name after with the start of I. Full name.
Reed Culver.
Do solemnly swear to uphold and defend
Do solemnly swear to uphold and defend
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Alaska,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Alaska,
and the charter and ordinances
and the charter and ordinances
of the city of Soldotna,
of the city of Soldotna,
and that I will faithfully and impartially perform
and I will faithfully and impartially perform
and discharge my duties
and discharge my duties
as police officer to the best of my ability.
as police officer to the best of my ability.
I take this oath freely,
I take this oath freely,
without reservation,
without reservation,
and promise to act
and promise to act
at all times in accordance
at all times in accordance
with the law enforcement code of ethics.
with the law enforcement code of ethics.
Furthermore,
Furthermore,
I recognize the badge of my office
I recognize the badge of my office
as a symbol of public faith,
as a symbol of public faith,
and I will honor and protect
and I will honor and protect
the public trust
the public trust
in serving the community
in serving the community
and fulfilling my fundamental law enforcement duties.
and fulfilling my fundamental law enforcement duties.
Congratulations.
Good job. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, what we have is a
those of you who might not understand the significance of it, the pinning of the badge is very important. It signifies the substantial oath of office that they just took. They're stipulating that they're going to protect this community and hold this badge in its honor. If you notice that the badge is worn over the heart, because our heart should be pure in the duties that we perform. So Mr. Culver is going to be pinned by his wife, and Officer Fresquez will be pinned by me, because her puppy dog couldn't make it tonight. Go ahead, Mayor. Officer Culver, Officer Fresquez.
Who's protection? Oh, my goodness.
Okay, moving on to the next item on the agenda. Public comments and presentations, items other than those appearing on the agenda, 3 minutes per speaker, 20 minutes aggregate. Are there any members from the public who would like to speak on any item not appearing on the agenda? For those participating through Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment. App users by pressing the raise your hand button, and phone participants by dialing *9 on your telephone. Please step forward and state your name and address for the record.
Yes, sir. My name is Zeke Johnston. My address is 34218 Poppywood on K Beach. Also want to say that I appreciate having such a good chief of police of our city. Very much appreciate that. Mr. Mayor, council members, and city administration, appreciate the opportunity to speak to you this evening. There are those of us in the community who are disappointed by the inappropriate and politically charged postcard that has been mailed out to the community with the intent to defame one of the council members who's been running for political office recently. The exposure of that kind of content to the community is the very reason why we made a point to address this council from the beginning. Not only was the postcard inappropriate, but it has furthered unfounded concerns that some of us that are seeking reasonable changes in our community are politically motivated. Politics have never been our intent for coming here and speaking. With that said, we have been working on making some minor adjustments to the Soldotna Park and Pavilion use form, and we'll have the form submitted shortly for your review with those changes. Also, it has been mentioned to us several times by this council that work is being done behind the scenes to make reasonable changes on this issue. And we ask that you would please provide us with some details regarding the process that is being made by the council. Once again, thank you for the opportunity to address you all this evening. Thank you very much.
Before you leave,
Yes, sir.
when you get that document put together, would you make sure that the city manager and the city clerk receive a copy of it? That way we can have a public record of it, and it will be
Yes, sir.
Sent on to the Parks and Rec Committee for their review also.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. Thank you,
Thank
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Carey.
I want to thank you especially for the beginning of your comments tonight. I greatly appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir.
Anything else? Okay, thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you, sir.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Seeing no one in the chambers, I'll take a look at Zoom, and I see no one on Zoom. Next item on the agenda is Assembly and Legislative Report. Are there any representatives from the borough or the state in attendance who would like to speak? For those participating through Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment. App users by pressing the raise your hand button, and phone participants by dialing *9 on your telephone. I see no one here in the chamber, and I see no hands raised from Zoom. So we'll move on to the next item. Item 7, public hearings. Ordinance 2022-034, amending Soldotna Municipal Code to clarify that violations of Title 13, Chapter 14 are to be adjudicated under the minor offense schedule to include a fine for violation of Soldotna Municipal Code, Section 13.14.050, introduced by the city manager. May I have a motion to enact?
I would move to enact ordinance 2022-034.
Thank you, Mr. Chilson. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Report from the administration.
Thank you, Mayor. Chapter 13 includes a section regarding unlawful utility interconnection of sewers, to be specific, that indicates the violation is a misdemeanor in nature. Last spring, the council passed an ordinance repealing and replacing the minor offense table, which is a more effective minor offense procedure. This ordinance would simply amend that minor offense table to include the unlawful interconnection of sewers, and it would repeal the section that notes it as a misdemeanor. Again, somewhat of a housekeeping issue, and establishes that violation in the minor offense table, which again is a more effective procedure for addressing those violations. Thank you.
Thank you. Public hearing is now open. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this item? For those participating through Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment. App users by pressing the raise your hand button, and phone participants by dialing *9 on your telephone. Is there anyone here in the chamber wishing to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll look at Zoom, and I see no one on Zoom wishing to speak. So we will bring it back to the council. Are there any council comments? Seeing none, we'll call for the roll. Call for the vote.
Councilmember Chilson?
Yes.
Hutchings?
Yes.
Ruffridge?
Yes.
Nelson?
Yes.
Carey?
Yes.
You have 5 yes votes and 1 absence.
Thank you. Ordinance 2022-034 passes on a 5-0 vote with 1 absence. Moving on to the next agenda item is new business. A is ordinances, and we have none for introduction tonight. Resolutions, B, and we have none for that tonight. So moving on to item number 9 on the agenda, mayor and council reports. What do I have for tonight? We had a good election. I'm looking at some of the turnout we had. It looked pretty high, 30% and higher. I'm appreciative of everyone who went out and voted and exercised their right. And congratulations to, I believe officially, we could congratulate Mr. Ruffridge on his election as state representative representing District 7 in the Kenai-Soldotna area. And congratulations to you. I have nothing else to add, so we'll move on to council reports on boards and commissions. Soldotna Planning and Zoning Commission, Mr. Carey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I was extremely pleased with the meeting. Obviously, we rotate who goes to that meeting, and I get the last 2 months of the year. So again, it's been almost a year since I've been at one of their meetings. They're run wonderfully. All those good things. There are good people on it who are excellent. Most importantly, they're going to be asking for a work session with the council to come back and to bring to the council approval in terms of what they've been working on for quite a while, for numerous months, in terms of the development of our the downtown area. And again, I'm just very pleased. It sets what we want as a community for that area. And it is much more thorough than what I anticipated it would be. I'm on the council. It's my 4th term. But again, just going through, and just one aspect in terms of one of the things was reported that this area that we want activity. And again, as part of one of the premises. And, I asked, well, not just any activity. And they said, well, and so I asked if, the definition, because obviously when things are closed, you don't want a lot of activity. You want a lot of activity when businesses are open. And, but the types of businesses, they had questions themselves as to how many businesses selling marijuana there could be within this zone. That was an interesting one. Are there any restrictions, and could there be? But most importantly, it really will allow us to look at this community. We're very small in geographic area. We know that. It's a very compressed area. And just what is it that we want to promote in that area? I think they've done an excellent job in terms of the work and going through and looking at the different options and dealing with what we have. And again, I look forward to the council meeting with the commission to go over the work that they've done. And like I said, I think they've done very good work. And you may all be already knowledgeable of all the different categories, but I wasn't. And I was very pleased to learn. And I'm always pleased when I get to learn more, which is almost every day, I hope. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Carey? Thank you. Next item is Solana Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. Mr. Nelson.
Thank you. Parks and Rec Board met last week. One action item was discussed, and that was the work session for the parks use policy. They heard testimony on that subject as well as discussed it. They set a work session date for December 12th, and I did not write down the time. I believe it is 5:30 if my memory serves, but I'm sure some thank you, 5:30. Some other items came up, so thank you very much to Mr. Cornelis for giving a very good report on the field house. There was a lot of interest, a lot of very pleased board members and public in attendance talking about the field house and going through some timelines and design and things like that. So that was the bulk of the meeting. And then we heard some reports from the Parks and Rec director. I'll just note, I wrote down some numbers here. I think I'm going to get them right. But in general, campground use, it was reported, was down about 6% from last summer. But Mr. Carmichael noted last summer was a record-setting year. So it sounds like the Parks and Rec department was very, very busy during that time, during the summer. The mitigation, it was mentioned, mitigation for the spruce bark beetle and the dead trees was very, very good. Didn't result in any incidents or anything of concern. So revenues, of course, correspondingly were down, but not in an unexpected way. So that was kind of the major reports that we heard from staff, and obviously, board is looking forward to digging into some issues on the reservation policy on December 12th, and that's my report.
Any questions for Mr. Nelson? Mr. Joseph.
Maybe this is for the acting city manager. You mentioned the discussion on the construction status for the field house. Do we have a more exact estimate on the start date and end date for that construction at this point in time?
We do not have an exact start and finish yet. We continue to coordinate with, excuse me, both the Municipal Bond Bank and our bond council. We did have a meeting with the borough administration folks to talk a little bit about coordination with them and their projects that are forthcoming. So and then we're also continuing to investigate additional funding opportunities, and have had several meetings on that, looking for potential sponsors for some amenity purchases, for example, and organizations like the Rasmussen Foundation, and we've been talking with a few different folks. So we're narrowing it down. We still think that there may be a bond sale in late January, early February with the Municipal Bond Bank. So we're forecasting and working with bond counsel to identify potential rates and indebtedness and the impact to city finances. So we're still strategizing, and we don't have an exact date, but it does look like
Kind of ballpark, like
we're
things
firming
might
up
go
for
smooth.
this spring, summer. And then I have a project schedule that anticipates the procurement of the different project elements. For example, the pre-engineered steel building is going to be about a year-long lead time probably before, once it's ordered by the contractor, before it shows up on site. So there'll likely be some site work and winter shutdown, and it'll be the following summer when things really start going vertical. So when they start to firm up a little bit more, we'll make sure that we communicate those known dates.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Before we leave this, I did remember something. Veterans Day is Friday. Please thank a veteran if you see one. And the other thing is it's also the Marine Corps birthday coming up. 247 years, and I don't feel a day over 245. So, though I may look it. So, moving on. Next is public comments. Members of the public will have. Oh, he was talking earlier. I thought he was giving his report. So, city manager's report. We'll have the acting city manager's report.
All right, so I'll be brief, although I don't think we'll make our record short meeting. But I will be brief. Just a couple of quick notes. We've been making some great progress in the hiring front, which has been challenging for, I think, most agencies these days, to include our seasonal maintenance operator, a Parks and Rec maintenance position, the new HR assistant position, an account clerk, and then tonight you saw our police officer sworn in, which was pretty neat. We're working on our Riverfront redevelopment project website. That project team will be back up in January. We'll have an open house where we'll really invite people to come in and talk about that project. We are actively reaching out to stakeholders that may be involved in that Riverfront redevelopment project. I had a quick note here on the field house, and I touched on that earlier, so I won't delve into that. And then finally, rain is coming. So we've been scraping, scooping, and the sanders are ready to go. So it might get crummy out there, so drive safe. But we'll be ready to attack the city streets and make sure there's some traction down. That concludes my report.
Any questions for the city manager? Saying none, we'll move on to the next item. As public comments, members of the public will have 3 minutes to comment. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to comment? For those participating through Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment. App users by pressing the raise your hand button, and phone participants by dialing *9 on your telephone. Is there anyone here in the chamber wishing to speak on any item? And seeing no one, we'll move to Zoom, and I see no hands raised at Zoom. So we'll move on to the next agenda item, number 12, council comments. Ms. Hutchings.
Thank you. I would like to congratulate Justin. It was a well-fought campaign. I even helped wave flags in the cold last night. So we're really pleased to see that. I'm looking forward to great results from Justin in Juneau. The other comment I'd like to make is just kind of follow up on what Kyle said. I spoke with Jason Graff with the Soldotna redevelopment plan, and we went over items mostly because we have property adjoining what is going to be worked on, and it was, I thought, a very positive meeting. I was really pleased with it. And I'm going to try to get this done quick, so have a great evening. Thank you.
Mr. Nelson.
And no comments tonight, thanks.
Mr. Choson.
And no comments.
Mr. Carey.
Always. Right before I came over and watching the news, the West Point class of 1941, so obviously the last class before World War II began, there is one member of that class left, and he is 103 years old. And I, as a history teacher, I support our history and all those who have served. And again, it was just very nice to listen to him and his story in terms of what went on. And we need to thank all those who have served. We can never do enough for any of those who are in our military, whether they picked up and were overseas fighting or not. Their willingness to serve, to put a flag on their shoulder, and to put on the uniform. I also think all of us need to do everything we can to continue to thank all those who served during the Vietnam era. Thank you.
Mr. Ruffridge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to each of you who gave kind congratulations. And certainly nothing certified yet, but we'll wait till the 23rd and figure that out. So appreciate Linda coming out, and Lisa was there, and Mr. Mayor came down to wave signs, and felt supported by this council, and I certainly appreciate that. It's been a long road, And, but I'll be with you for a little bit longer, so you don't get rid of me too soon. And other than that, I appreciate the opportunity to speak. Thanks.
Thank you. And we'll move on to the next item, is executive session. There is no executive session this evening. And last thing, meeting announcements. November 30th, 2022, City Council meeting at 6 p.m. Seeing nothing further on our agenda and nothing before us, meeting is adjourned.